Okay. Is this mic on? Okay, mic is alive. Hello, everybody. Did everybody find some place to sit? Okay, I will start now. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Voyager Warranty Hacking Your Glass session. My name is Hyunyoung Sung. I also go by HY.
And I'm Pierre-Yves Laligand, but I go by PY.
And we're Google X software engineers. So before I go dive right into the talk, I'd like to do a short recap of what has already been covered at probably the 2 previous Glass Track sessions, with Developers for Glass and Mirror API. So the name of our Glass system's main interface is called the timeline. It's basically a strip of cards laid out horizontally. And when the screen is woken up, the first screen that you see is the clock screen. And to its right, you have past event timeline item cards that is generated when you take a photo or record a video or even receive an email. And to its left are your future event cards, such as now cards and navigation directions. If you are a third-party service, the way you can insert static timeline item cards into our main interface is using Mirror API, which is a cloud API. And by design, this was designed to be simple and easy to use, and so that developers doesn't have to worry about managing system resources, such as power lock, wake lock, and camera, and so forth. For those tasks, PY and myself and the many engineers in the Glass team are currently actively working on designing and building Glass SDK. And at the time of the Explorer Edition launch, we thought that we want to get early input as much as possible. And so for every one of you to actually explore our platform, we inserted several tools such as ADB and Fastboot OEM Unlock so that you can explore our Glass platform so we can gather early feedback on what you'd like to see in Glass SDK. And while we were doing that, we also decided to hold this session so that we can guide you step by step what you would have to do to use these tools. So you all probably know that Glass is built on top of Android. And so here I would like to see a quick show of hands. How many of you have developed Android applications? This is very good. And okay, so then how many of you have downloaded Android open source project and changed it, modified it, and built it and pushed it to some mobile platform? So I like also the show of hands too. So since most of you already know about Android platform and how to build applications, we will not cover how you can program and develop Glass applications today in the session. What we will be covering are basically 2 things. The first thing, how you can modify your existing Android applications so that you can run it on Glass platform to try it out. And while you're doing that, if you come to a showstopper where you can't do certain things because you don't have root access, the second part of this talk, we're going to tell you the commands that you have to execute in order to root your Glass device. So let's first talk about how you can run your Android applications on Glass without voiding your warranty. So Android Debug Bridge is something that you want to enable and use. On the laptop, the client side, you would want to download the latest Android SDK, and under Platform Tools directory, there will be a tool, ADB, that you can use to talk to your Glass device when it's connected through USB. And on Glass device, there's settings device info card that PY will show you later on this demo, how you can toggle the debug setting. And here are some of the things that you probably want to consider when you are modifying your Android applications to run on Glass platform. Currently, Explorer Edition is built on top of Android ICS MR1 version 4.0.4, API level 15. So what this means is that in your Android manifest file, you'd want to target the API level to be 15. But this does not mean that at the time of our consumer launch, this is the operating system that we'll be based on. So keep that in mind. Now, in terms of hardware, most of the communication and motion sensors are available through Android standard APIs. But what is different is the touch handling. Instead of having a touch screen, Glass has a touchpad on the side. And so if your input handling depends on any screen coordinates, then it will not work. So you'd want to change that to something that can take focus and something that can use more or less D-pad-like operations. In terms of the display, as opposed to having LCD that is opaque, Glass system has a display that is 25-inch, 8-foot way display that is translucent or transparent. Now the keyword here is transparent. You want the best contrast as possible, and in order to have this effect, you want to change your background to be black and have white text or light text to have the best contrast, and this will probably save your battery life a lot too. So now PY is going to do a demo of how of launcher and settings and Notepad app that we downloaded from these open sources.
All right. Thank you very much, HY. So first, before getting into the demo, I'd like to briefly talk about our setup. So the window that you can see at the bottom of my screen is a tool called Screencast, which we developed on the team. It will allow me to share with you what's showing up on my device. In addition, the device that I'm currently wearing is software-wise completely similar to the ones that I see on some heads in the attendance. It's just that I have an older hardware revision. Lucky you. Another thing that I'd like to point out, if you have Bluetooth devices, we would really appreciate it if you could turn them off at this point. That would make this demo much easier. Thank you. All right, so let's get on with the demo. So the first part I want to show you is pretty much a very strict prerequisite for everything you're going to do after that is to enable ADB. So when I wake the device up and you land on the clock card, all you have to do is swipe all the way back until you reach the settings card. Once you're in the settings bundle, look for the device info card, tap to reach options, and then the second one is the ADB toggle. So right now, as you can see, I already have ADB on because under the hood, that's what Screencast needs in order to be able to pull some frame off of the device and show them to you on my laptop. So all right, so now we have ADB enabled, and there are a lot of things we can do. And the first thing we're going to do is actually install some apps. So what HY and I have done is actually download the source code for a couple of apps, so launcher and settings from the Android open source project. Pretty much just compile those into regular APKs, and now I'm in the process of installing them on my device. So we didn't really have to modify the sources with one little exception in the settings applications manifest file. There's a line that needs to be changed. Well, I'm not going to tell you anymore. I'll leave that as a homework for you later. All right, so now my apps are installed, and I'm going to just turn the device back on, and as you can see now, something that should look very familiar to some of you, I now have the option to choose several different home apps. So for the purpose of this demo, I'm just going to use the Android launcher. And here you go. If you've Thank you. So if you've ever played with an Android device before, this should look very familiar. So now I can go into the app section, and sure enough, here's settings that I just installed. So usually when I do this demo, the first thing I do, and this is a great example, I go directly to the display section, then I reach for the sleep property, and I bump it all the way up because I'm tired of seeing my screen. Oops, timeout on me. All right, let's go. Here it is. So you probably noticed that in order to get around the apps, I'm using the touchpad that is mounted on the right side of my frame. So this is possible because of some slight modifications we made to the Android platform. So by default, if touchpad input events go unhandled, they get automatically transformed into navigation events. So for example, forward and backward swipes, or horizontal swipes, get turned into focus motion events. Taps are used to select, and swipe downs simply have the back action. So this is pretty powerful, and if you install any apps on a glass device, it will allow you to navigate around the apps and reach a lot of its features. Unfortunately, if your app wasn't really designed with glass in mind, then you're going to find out that, for example, if you have a lot of focusable widgets, or if basically your app was designed for a touch screen, this just won't cut it. Thankfully, this is an Android device, and like most Android devices, this guy has a Bluetooth chip. And it supports the HID profile, which allows it to pair with a lot of input devices. So for this demo, I picked this little keyboard. It's a very simple Bluetooth keyboard. You can buy it off the shelf, or you can buy it online. So I really like this one because it already has some hard keys for some Android system functionalities like home and back. So that comes in very handy. So all right. That's the moment where I'm supposed to cross my fingers and try to pair it with glass. All right, so luckily we have the settings app. I go to the Bluetooth section, it's searching, and if I don't forget to turn it on, maybe it's going to show up alongside the 1,500 devices that are in this room. All right. Hey, I got your name. We're going to filter when you exit, who ruined my demo. All right, let's try this again. I'm going to try to turn it back on. And let me know if you spot a keyboard here. Yeah. Yes. Oh! All right, one more time. Yeah, this one thing. All right, it's pairing.
Let's keep our fingers crossed.
Come on.
Oh, okay.
I'll try this again. We have time. All right, Bluetooth again. Turn it on, it's discoverable. It's there, it was there.
Yay!
Okay, so now I pair. Now I have to type this little code, 4133, enter. And despite what this guy is saying, I can tell you that I'm already paired. All right. Get out of there. So now I can use the D-pad on the device to just get around the app. And also, this guy has a mouse pad, so I can have a mouse pointer, which is super handy for touchscreen app. So this is actually very useful if you intend to port an existing app onto glass. And the reason for that is that it will allow you to start with a fully functional app and then gradually adjust it to work great with the form factor, with the display technology, with the input modalities and whatnot. The alternative, if you don't do that, is to pretty much start from scratch, and you're going to have to pay like a huge upfront cost to get to a version that is kind of sort of working, which is, believe me, time-consuming and very annoying. All right, to demonstrate this a little further, I'm going to go ahead and install the third app, which is the Notepad app. All right, let's do this. So just like the previous two apps, you can find it in the Android open source project, or if you have already an SDK installation on your computer, you can probably find it somewhere in the samples directory. So I'm just going to go there. In the app section, now I have notes, and sure enough, I can operate it as if it was on a touch screen. And so much for my screen timeout being bumped up. Okay, so I create a new note, and I type, hello, IO. I can save. So basically, I can use all the functionalities of the app, and then from that point on, I'm going to gradually roll out improvements and make it better on glass. So to summarize what we've seen, 1, you can easily turn on ADB on glass. 2, you can use it to install apps. And 3, Bluetooth devices are quite handy if you want to tinker with these apps. Back to you, HY.
Thank Thank you, PY. Okay. So now this time, I am going to share with you a video that we received from one of our explorers, High Fidelity Inc. They're one of our glass explorers. And what they did is they created an avatar app using the motion sensors and microphone of the glass platform.
Hey, this is Ryan from High Fidelity. We're obsessed here with low latency avatar-to-avatar communication, and we've been taking advantage of all this cool hardware that's got the sensors in it, glass being one of those. And you can see that we've built a simple APK here that transmits its sensor data, glass's sensor data over UDP to our client and moves the avatar's head as I move around. We've got it locked in at about 50 hertz. Pretty cool stuff.
So all that was fun, but there are still things that you cannot do by just enabling ADB. You cannot access user data directory, which has all the cool key value pairs in the SQLite 3 database that you want to tinker with. I see some nods there. And in case you want to grab, get permissions for certain platform resources that are already held by Glass stock applications, then you'd probably want to delete some of the Glass APKs, which you will not be able to do if you're not root of your device. So that's something you cannot do. And last but not the least, you cannot replace the operating system of the Glass device, similar to how developers replace Android operating system with CyanogenMod. So now I'll go on to the second part of this talk. I will go through how you can gain that root access. So there are 5 commands that you have to execute to gain root access on off-the-shelf Glass device. First command reboots into the bootloader that implements Fastboot protocol on top of USB device driver. Now, in order for your laptop to talk with a Glass in this bootloader state, you'd want to use the Fastboot tool that you downloaded in the similar way that you downloaded ADB tool. Now, one thing to note though is I actually tried on multiple platforms and only the Fastboot tool from Linux platform works and Mac version unfortunately does not work. So keep that in mind. Well, I'm glad you have the answer. He's the person that you want to talk to if you want to do that. Secondly, you'd want to execute Fastboot OEM Unlock, which removes, basically it gives you access to override any system partitions, but what this does is it removes any security precautions, and because we didn't want anybody to actually grab your device and execute this command to access any of your important user data, as a byproduct of this command, it'll erase all your user data and all your cache and make it the state of as when you execute factory reset, basically. But this doesn't actually give you root access. The third command, which overrides boot partition with boot image that you can download from this site, probably sometimes before the end of I/O. Developers under Glass, under downloads, this will enable you to actually gain root access. What boot image does, it contains RAM disk that defines a lot of system properties, including which shell and which services gain access to which partitions and so forth. And finally, you would want to get out of this bootloader, and then in the regular mode, you would want to execute ADB root, which will finally grant you root access. Now I'm going to show you a video of how this was all executed on POI's laptop. So first, you would want to execute ADB devices to verify that your Glass device is connected. And by default, you don't have access to my favorite data partition. And so you try to gain that by adb root, but it fails. So you execute the first command, adb reboot bootloader, and then there's a fast forward because it takes some time. And now I verify that it is in bootloader state by Fastboot devices, and then execute Fastboot OEM Unlock. But the first one doesn't do anything but prints out warning messages. Don't do this. And then, if you're really sure, execute that second command, which will erase the user data. It takes about 5 minutes because it's about 13 gigs of data that it erases as this process. And then execute that overriding command to swap out and override boot partition, and then reboot into normal state. Now, still, I don't have access to the data partition because I didn't execute the last command. And so I execute it, and then now, voila, yes, there. You have access to data partition. So, when I was asked to do this do this talk, I wanted to show you an awesome demo what you can do on a glass device. And it had to be all in-house. It cannot be in-house Google technology. So I asked around and asked our good friend Greg, who's a glass engineer who has been in the team for longer than us. He actually programs on his glass device using Emacs that is running on Ubuntu. So I asked him, okay, Greg, what did you do to have Ubuntu running there? And he's like, oh, it's very easy. Just download these two apps from the Play Store. The first one will run the terminal for you, and then the second one, it downloads the script so that it downloads the modified Ubuntu image and all the BusyBox and Chirut and all these command line tools that you need in order to set up Ubuntu environment. So we did that. And now PY is actually going to show you a demo of a device that is running Ubuntu on top of glass.
All right. Thanks, HY. All right, thanks, HY. So you may have seen that I switched devices between the demos, so those are pretty much identical. The only difference is this one went through all the steps that you just saw in the video, and also, as you can see, we've installed the two apps that HY just mentioned. So I'm going to go ahead and just enter the terminal emulator, and the first thing I want to do is switch to the super user. All right. And despite that error message, I can tell you I have superpowers right now. So I'm then going to go to the directory where the images were installed. That's this one. Let's see if we have everything there. Yep, we have images, and we even have this little script that actually does all the hard work of starting everything. Oops, let me try that again. Here it is. Basically what it does, it mounts the images and just initializes the operating system, and that's it. So let's try to run it now. Ubuntu.sh. Here we go. Whoop, there's stuff happening. That's usually good or not. So let's see now what we think we're doing. If I can find the backslash, here we go. Now let's check which version of Linux we think we're running. Yep, this is Ubuntu, and it has an SSH server, I think a VNC server, and a whole lot of features that you can then use on glass, including Emacs. Back to you, HY.
So the takeaway message from this talk is that during this talk, I introduced you two modes that where you can explore your glass platform, the debug mode and root mode. But I want to make some disclaimers here on each one of these. So the way that you push Android APKs on your glass device and use it, this is not really Glass team's recommended way of creating a glass experience. It's more for you to actually play around and go nuts with whatever you want to do. That's why we actually did this demo and showed you all these methods. And in terms of gaining that root access, even though there are recovery methods, there is a chance that depending on what you do, your device may get stuck in a state where it will be difficult to recover, in which case Google will not be supporting. So keep that in mind, and when you do root your device, you have to really sure that you want to do it. But putting these disclaimers aside, play with the platform and share with us and share with the world the awesome work that you can do on Glass. And when you do, these are some of the communities and websites that you can, ask questions, get technical tips, and often actually PY and myself go to these sites and see like what people are doing and talk about it. And we're excited that you guys are doing this. And for people who actually have Glass device or just picked it up, there's also Explorer community that you can join, where you can also get more information on Mirror API, hacking Glass, and all in general questions. So do visit these websites. And on that note, thank you so much. And we'll take questions.
Hi, I have a question. Are you going to release a factory image that we can flash Glass back to its original configuration?
Yes.
Huh?
It's there.
It's public now.
So to answer your question, yes, we're going to make the factory images available for pretty much any version that we're going to publish.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hey, cool. Hi, I'm Cedric. I'm a robotics engineering student. So I want to know if it's possible to connect Glass to other hardware like Arduino and everything related to it.
That's a good question. Actually, so as you probably imagine, the Glass device has a micro USB port, which you can connect stuff to it. I personally haven't tried and see what you can do with it, but I invite you to give it a shot if you can, and then let us know how it goes. And then from there, we can take your feedback back to the team and see how we can make it better for this kind of hacking.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
I take over there.
Yes, sir.
Hello. Hello. So one of the issues with having ADB debug mode available from the settings menu is that it's very easy to turn that feature on because there's no kind of ping code lock. I mean, if I were, for instance, have access to your Glass for even like 30 seconds, I can very easily get ADB debug mode on, at which point I can now install services on your device even without having to get root access. And then, of course, I can oftentimes use an exploit now in order to be able to escalate to root access. I was wondering if the Glass team had any plans on being able to put some kind of security on the device when it's just sitting?
Yeah, that's definitely an issue that we have in mind, and we have people working on it currently, so stay tuned.
So notice this is actually Explorer Edition that you guys are trying out on the consumer launch version. There will be more security precaution settings that you'll be able to make sure that they're safe.
Yeah, just as somebody who has the Explorer Edition and purposely not wearing it here at I/O today because I'd be concerned that somebody, for instance, would be able to get into it. It just is concerning even before release, right? So.
I think you can trust these people. They're cool. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Mark. I would like to know, because you just flashed a new boot image for rooted mode, is there a boot image available to go back to the OTA updates mode?
So I think that goes back to the question the other gentleman had. I mean, we're going to make all the factory images available, and that will include all the images you need to do that.
Okay, that's great.
Yes, sir.
My name is Ethan. I have to say I'm really excited about the debug mode capabilities, and thank you guys for bringing it to all of us. Two questions come to mind. One is it possible to get to the same voice recognition that you use in the core app, number one, and number two, the kind of on-head detection, kind of this, I don't know what the sensor is. Can we get access to that as well on our own?
So for the first part of the question about voice recognition, I think that's definitely something that we're thinking about integrating and allowing you to access. I'm not 100% sure of what the state is, but you might want to try to use the standard recognizer intents that are available in Android and see what it does. But I think we're working on trying to bring that level of support. As for on-head detection, I don't think there's anything available at this point, but do you have any other application in mind for that? Or?
I'm sure I could think of something.
Great. Just let us know. Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Dante. Looking around the room, there are a lot of people with glass, but most people still don't have it. Is there any time frame we could expect from Google of more, like a bigger rollout to more developers, more explorers?
So currently, the Explorer program is closed. We might, reopen it for applications at some point. I think we've already announced that we're trying to shoot for to have a consumer release by the end of the year. We're working really hard for that when we're not giving talks at I/O. So stay tuned. Again, there's nothing, no more information that I give you at this point, but we're trying to.
So given that you're making an official native dev kit available, how do you see those types of apps being delivered to consumer devices? Is there going to be a store or some kind of delivery platform?
I mean, this delivery is a big part of our work, right? It's just, we can't just provide an SDK and hope that people will find a way to install apps. So as HY mentioned, this is something we're pretty actively working on these days. Again, unfortunately, I have nothing official to announce here, but rest assured, there's going to be a good delivery mechanism for those, like just as you would expect from a regular Android device.
But for the glasswares, you can already go to my Glass website, and install some of the CNN and Path and some of those third-party apps. So you can install those already and try them out. And if we figure that that is where we should also keep the apps, that could be one place. There's actually this is an open question, really.
I'm Luca. Two questions. One, once I root it, can I get access to the camera stream and or just standard Android, or is there something funky with that?
Well, actually.
No.
Yeah.
Actually, I get the mic back.
Or I can talk.
So actually, I'm going to speak louder. So actually, you don't even need to root for that. You can just use the standard camera APIs or even the camera intents, and you're going to get access to the camera. It's a standard Android device.
Oh, okay. And what about NDK support? That's the second question. Native.
As part of the SDK effort, we're also looking at NDK. Again, nothing to announce here, but I think that would be pretty cool to have something.
But if I root it, I can get full NDK access
yeah.
then, right? Yeah. Sure. Okay, cool. Thanks.
Somewhat related to that question, do we have access, without rooting, do we have access to all of the hardware, including that, the eye tracking, whatever thing on the inside?
So that's the same question as the gentleman before. I don't think there's anything yet. You can try.
Okay, so the demo with the head sort of moving around, the video that you played, that did not require rooting, correct?
No, there was just, I think they were just using the accelerometer, magnetometer, and gyroscope, and that's it.
Hi, my name is Valam. Right now, we don't need an Android physical device to develop for Android because we have the emulator. Is there a similar plan to ship something like an emulator for the glass so that the ones who don't have it yet explore it?
That's a good question. Actually, something that I talked about with our design team. I think that's something that we can definitely do, and I hope that we can provide something along those lines. But really, I think in order to correctly develop an app, I think you really need at least one device, because you need to see, how it feels. It's really, really different, in terms of experience from a phone or a tablet. But as part of the SDK effort, we're of course thinking about, not only APIs, but also tools that we can provide you with, so that you can do your job and build awesome apps.
Hey, any plans to expose the labs features to user?
What?
The labs features in the framework.
What is the labs
What is
feature?
labs? I don't know what labs are.
Which?
There's lab features in the Glass software which like turn on the browser, turn on Wing support, turn on voice all throughout the device.
This is not something I think we plan to expose. This is something just internal at this point.
Okay, thanks.
I think we're going to take the last question because we're running out of time. So,
my name is Arthur van Hoff. I've been building a few apps using the Mirror API. I'm really excited about this. I want to know if there's a way to launch an APK in normal mode from the timeline, and if so, can I know what the user's identity is?
So what do you mean by normal mode?
So that I know I can install an APK and launch it using ADB, but how do I start an application?
That's a good question. So again, as part of the SDK effort, we're really looking at the entry points into the existing Glass experience. I think we have a couple of ideas at this point. If you have some more, please let us know because we'd be really interested. But yeah, we're going to have something along this line.
What about the credentials?
Just one more, Alan.
Alan Furstenberg, and I know I'm not going to make...
So I think we're running out of time right now, but we're going to be hanging out outside of the room if you have more questions. So thanks again for coming.
Personal question. Thank you. Hi. Good.